I've read this explicit, well, explicit for 1748 novel Fanny Hill, a woman, Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure by John Cleland. Hi, I'm Annie, and of course you all know about GarbAugust, but if you don't, there is more information about this fun reading event where we celebrate all trash and pulp fiction in the description box below. So there are weekly prompts, and for the upcoming week it is sex and or violence, and I have the sex recommendation for you for next week, and that is Fanny Hill by John Cleland. And I found this a really fun and amusing read. So this is about Fanny Hill, and her parents died when she was only 15, and there is nobody who can provide for her. And as lovely looking as she does, men are preying on her. And most of them, they don't have honorable intentions, but one does. And but his father does not approve of this relationship, and he sends his son to foreign parts. So that is the end of the relationship. But now Fanny Hill is introduced to the pleasures of sex. And she is tricked into the life of prostitution, because what other options are there of a young woman who has nobody who can provide for her? The whole novel is a series of sexual exploits by Fanny, and Fanny and other prostitutes have, but mainly Fanny has, with a variety of men and one woman who introduces her to the pleasures of sex. And she learns a lot from her, as she is a novice in prostitution land. And I must admit, I found this really entertaining to read. It has sexual explicit content in it. Well, for 1748 explicit, it was explicit anyway, but I found it harmless enough. Yes, there are details described of sexual activities and sexual behavior, but I found it never to be pornographic. But I can imagine that this was absolutely shocking in 1748, especially because it is about a woman enjoying sex. And erotic literature in 1748 was mainly about men enjoying sex. So this I found really interesting. This novel was quickly banned in the UK, where John Cleland came from and where it was written. The book was prosecuted under the Obscene Publications Act of 1857 and was not widely available until 1970. How shocking! But it was widely available in other parts of Europe, like for example France, where they weren't that choosy and picky about their literature, and spicy stuff was widely available out there in other European countries as well. So anyway, this 1857 law was a response to the growing concern of widespread and widely accessible erotic literature. The law was often used to prosecute not only the people involved in the production and sale or possession of erotic literature, but also the people involved in pornographic images. But this issue has illustrations in it, I think engravings in it with naughty naughty things going on. I think these were images that were published centuries ago, I think, but these were harmless enough nowadays. However, for an erotic novel, I find the character of Fanny Hill very well developed. She's portrayed as a sympathetic girl, as she's just a girl when she is orphaned. And this novel opens up a discussion about how hypocrisy and double standards of society regarding sexuality and morality was back in the days when it was written in the 18th century and going on in the 19th century as well. And it pushed really boundaries and paved the way for more open discussion about sexuality. Although I don't think this was the case back in 1748, but most certainly back in 1970 when it was widely available and published, allowed to be published back in the UK. But although Fanny Hill is coaxed into the life of prostitution, she does make her own decisions. She is the one who chooses with which men she has sex with and relationship with, but the men get to decide how. But she's the one who decides to accept these manners of sexual acts she is involved in. So I can imagine that Fanny Hill, although a fictional character, was some sort of the first ever suffragette. Editing Annie here. Of course, I realize now what I am saying is a bit absurd. Of course, Fanny Hill wasn't a suffragette, as she wasn't a feminist activist or anything. She was an emancipated woman concerning her own life, but she didn't affect other women with it in this novel. So, yeah, I'm a bit silly stating that she was a suffragette of some sort out here in this video. So forget I said it. I don't know if she was really, if not a suffragette, she was really highly emancipated a woman, as she got to decide. She got to make her own decisions in her own life. Fanny Hill had a lasting impact on the genre of erotic literature, particularly in terms of the focus of emotional depth and the character development. Reading this novel, I have the feeling that it gives more a realistic view of women having sex and women enjoying sex, because this was new, the female perspective of enjoying sex. And although the story is on a whole is more an erotic fairy tale, as it turns out, as how things turn out, but that brings me off the subject of prose and erotic prose. John Cleland uses lush language and vivid descriptions to describe, to depict the sexual acts and desires, to create a more immersive and engaging experiences for the reader. I read somewhere that D.H. Lawrence also used this technique in Lady Chatterley's Lover, but I haven't read Lady Chatterley's Lover. Have you read Lady Chatterley's Lover? Does he do this in his novel? Do let me know in the comments, because I'm really curious about that. Anyway, we can only guess where John Cleland got his inspiration from. It could very well be that he visited prostitutes and he asked the odd question, but it's highly unlikely that he did thorough research for this novel. He definitely did not scientific research, but it could have been he asked the odd question when visiting a prostitute for personal pleasures, or maybe he asked friends questions who visited prostitutes. I don't know. It could have been he asked his personal friends. It could have been he was very well in, how shall I put it, in empathy for women, showing empathy for women who, and to find out by doing so what women liked and how things worked for women. I have no idea, and it's only a guesswork, but I think he did an excellent job at portraying the female perspective of the life of sex anyway. Fanny Hill, Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure, is my recommendation for next week's prompt. Sex, but there is one page or so which has also some spanking in it, so you can also read this for violence. I must admit that wasn't my favorite page, as the spanking goes on really hard and is really vivid described. So this was not my favorite page. But so if you want to watch my video about my violence recommendation, I will put a link to my violence recommendation in the description box below, because my violence recommendation is more of the humoristic, dark humoristic kind of recommendation, so check out that video. Keep those pulp juices flowing and have fun reading Fanny Hill or something else. Let me know what you are reading, and I hope to see you in the next video.